We've been married for 17 years. She's 39, I'm 40, and we have 3 daughters, 15, 13, and 11. We've been together since high school, nearly 23 years in total. Honestly, I don't even know where to start because I hardly know anything about what happened. Here's what I do know. 3 days before everything unraveled, she came home from work on the 4th of July, clearly upset. She had to work that day, but when she got home, she was flustered, emotional, and in a rush. She threw some clothes into an overnight bag and left. That's it. I didn't even realize what was happening until our oldest daughter told me. She was home when it happened and tried to talk to her mom, but all she got was tears. My wife wouldn't explain anything. She just said we needed to be patient and understanding. Then she left. I've reached out to everyone I could think of for answers, her brother, her sister, even one of her close friends from work. Her brother claims he doesn't know anything. Her work friend said she saw my wife at work that morning, but by lunchtime she was gone. That's it. That's all I've got. It's been 3 days now, no calls, no texts, nothing. Not even for the kids. I'm here with my daughters, doing my best to hold it together, but they're constantly asking, what happened to Mom? Why did she leave? And all I can tell them is that she's at her grandparents' place and we have to be patient and understanding. Just like she said. But honestly, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Part of me wants to grab the kids, hop in the car, and drive the 3 hours to her grandparents' house to get some answers. The waiting, the not knowing is unbearable. But I don't want to make things worse. The kids think we had some massive fight and are headed for divorce. But that couldn't be further from the truth. We never fight. They know that. So here I am, stuck in this endless loop of emotions. I'm worried. I'm scared. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I don't know what to think. If something terrible had happened, if someone had died, wouldn't I be the first person she'd tell? And if it's something personal, like an old trauma coming back to haunt her, why wouldn't she come to me for support? That's what we do for each other, or at least that's what I thought. Nothing about this makes sense. I feel like I'm going in circles, trying to come up with some logical explanation, but I can't. Meanwhile, my daughters and I are left here in the dark, not knowing what's going on, with no one telling us anything. I just don't understand. Why would someone do this to their family? What do you think? Why would a wife leave like this without a word, and then later admit to cheating out of boredom? If you've got any ideas, hit pause on this video and leave your thoughts in the comments. Maybe someone out there can make sense of this, because I sure can't. Update 1. Turns out, everyone was right. It was an affair. I don't have much to say right now. It's been a long, sleepless night. Sorry this update is so short, but I'm just not in the headspace to write much. I spent most of last night reading through comments, and while I haven't been able to respond, I appreciate the advice and support. Here's what I've managed to piece together so far. Last night, after my father-in-law didn't return my call, I ended up contacting the police, as many of you suggested. They ran a background check, which stirred up more trouble than I can even begin to explain right now. But the truth is out. My wife was cheating on me. For at least 2 years, probably longer. And the man she was involved with passed away on Tuesday night after suffering a heart attack. To make things worse, it seems like her mom and, likely, her sister knew about the affair and helped her cover it up. As of now, I haven't heard from my wife, and she hasn't reached out to me or the kids. I'm trying to shield our daughters from this mess. But honestly, I have no idea what to do next. That's all I know, and it's already more than I can handle. If you're someone who prays, please keep my family in your prayers. Update 2. I've been reading a lot of stories like mine lately, mostly at night, after the chaos of the day dies down. That's when my thoughts start spiraling. Some nights, I feel crushed by sadness. Other nights, I'm so angry I don't know what to do with myself. And sometimes it's everything all at once. Sleep is almost impossible and I feel like a zombie during the day. Originally, I thought my wife's affair lasted about 2 years. Now, it looks like it was much longer than that. The man she was involved with had known her for a long time, and it's only his sudden death, a heart attack, that brought everything to light. I'm still trying to gather information, with the help of my oldest daughter. There's a lot I'm not ready to talk about yet. I wasn't planning on continuing to share updates, but so many people have reached out with advice and support. It's honestly been one of the few things keeping me sane right now. It's heartbreaking to realize how many people have gone through or are going through this kind of pain. To everyone who has been in my shoes, I'm truly sorry for what you've endured. Over the past couple of days, I've met with 2 different attorneys to figure out my options. I've also been trying to get into therapy, but there's a long waiting list in my area. In the meantime, I'm doing my best to follow the advice many of you have shared. Staying away from alcohol, I don't drink anyway, trying to eat, and attempting to exercise, even though I barely have the energy. I know some of you are probably wondering about the details, who, what, when, why, but I'm not ready to go there yet. Every day feels like another bomb drops, and I'm just trying to survive one thing at a time. Right now, I just need advice on one thing. How do I start sleeping again? My wife was my world. She was my best friend since high school, the mother of my 3 amazing daughters. We had our own jokes, secret handshakes, stuff that felt like it would last forever. And now it's all gone. Just like that. It's like everything we built together meant nothing to her. And now I have to face a future without her. Then the anger hits. I think about her betrayal, about how she could do this, and I lose it. I scream into my pillow, punch the mattress until my arms cramp up. And when that doesn't help, I just sit there, stuck in this endless loop of heartbreak and rage. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know how to stop the pain. If anyone has advice, anything at all, I'm listening. The nights are the hardest. I only fall asleep when I'm completely exhausted, but then I wake up suddenly, and the mental storm starts all over again. The little energy I have left goes into taking care of my daughters, who, bless their hearts, are now trying to take care of me like they're the parents. It's not fair to them. How did you sleep when you found out about an affair? How did you cope with the silence and emptiness at night, alone with your thoughts? I've decided that, aside from taking care of my daughters, getting sleep needs to be my top priority right now. But no matter what I try, it feels impossible. If anyone has advice, I'm all ears. It's been a little over a week since my ex-day, and the truth keeps unraveling. My wife's affair lasted more than 4 years. I still don't have a clear timeline, but I suspect it started as an emotional connection and eventually escalated into something physical. I can't help but wonder how the pandemic and lockdowns factored into this, but those are answers I may never get. Yesterday, my wife's parents showed up unexpectedly, supposedly to visit their grandchildren. She's been staying with them since this whole nightmare began. But let's be honest, their visit wasn't about seeing the kids. They spent maybe 15 minutes with my daughters before asking to speak to me privately. The conversation was, as you can imagine, long. I won't go into all the details here, but the gist of it was this: my wife wants to come home. According to them, she's afraid of facing the consequences of her actions and isn't ready to deal with the fallout. They also spent a lot of time trying to find out if I'm planning to file for divorce, while subtly urging me to forgive her and work on our marriage. It was clear they're ashamed and embarrassed by what she's done, but it was just as obvious they want her out of their house as soon as possible. The conversation was civil and respectful. I lied and told them I wasn't sure what my plans were yet. The truth? I'm set on divorce. But I didn't say that because I want to hear the truth from her first. I want her to sit across from me, look me in the eye, and tell me everything. 17 years of marriage. A relationship that started in high school. 3 kids. Countless memories. I want her to explain it all. I want her to apologize. Not just to me but to our daughters too. They deserve to hear it from her, to ask their questions, and to get some closure. I'm trying to handle this in a way that sets a good example for my children, even if it's painful for me. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I feel like I owe it to them and to myself to approach this as maturely as I can. Legally, I can't stop her from coming back home. My lawyer made that crystal clear. If she wants to move back in, I can't stop her. But I absolutely do not want her back under our roof right now. So I set a condition. I told her parents that she can come home, but only if she agrees to sit with me first, face to face, and tell me the whole truth about her affair. No evasion, no lies. After that, she'd have to sit down with our daughters, apologize, and answer their questions. It seemed fair to me since they already know what's going on. Now, to be clear, she doesn't have to meet my conditions to come home. If she insists, I can't stop her. But if she's too scared to face us, maybe I can use that time to my advantage. Is that wrong? I'm not trying to manipulate her or play games. I just need more time. Time to plan, time to process, time to get my head on straight. In our state, there's a mandatory 90-day waiting period before a divorce can be finalized. I'm trying to use that time wisely. The truth is, my daughters and I were just starting to adjust to our new routine. The idea of her suddenly coming back and throwing everything into chaos again feels unbearable. I know life will go on, even in the middle of this mess. We'll both have to go back to work, and eventually, some version of normal will return. But for now, I need space to figure out my next steps. Lately, my wife has been texting our daughters. She's constantly apologizing to them, telling them she doesn't want a divorce, and asking about me almost daily. My daughters have shown me her messages, and it seems like the weight of what she's done is really starting to sink in for her, especially over the last couple of days. I'm not sure how to handle this. Is my demand that she explain everything to me and the girls before fully re-entering our lives unreasonable? Her coming home feels inevitable now, and I want to make the best decisions I can for my daughters first, and then for myself. Update 4. Yesterday, my wife finally came back. The whole week leading up to it felt like preparation for the inevitable. But when the moment arrived, nothing could have prepared me for the awkwardness. In the past, whenever she walked through the door, I'd greet her with a hug and a kiss. This time, it was just heavy, horrible tension. She walked toward me and tried to hug me, but I turned away like nothing had happened. Once she settled in, I reminded her of the one condition I'd set for her coming home. She needed to sit down with me and tell me everything. Why she'd been gone for almost 3 weeks, why she'd betrayed us if she truly loved her family. Her response? I'm not ready. She'd already said the same thing earlier in the week when we spoke on the phone, but hearing it again face to face was too much. It took everything I had not to scream at her right then and there. I forced myself to take a few deep breaths and stay calm, but I still couldn't stop myself from snapping. I told her, flat out, that she'd cheated on me for over 4 years with her coworker. I told her I knew she'd planned to leave me for him, that she'd abandoned her family, and now she was walking back through the door without fulfilling the one condition I'd asked for. And then I said the words, I want a divorce. That's when things got weird. She didn't respond the way I'd expected. No emotional outburst, no tearful confession, no shouting or accusations. Instead, she just froze. Her eyes widened like she couldn't believe how much I knew, and then she looked down at the floor and stood there, completely motionless. We stood there, in silence, for what felt like an eternity. Probably 5 minutes, but it felt much longer. I had prepared myself for so many possible scenarios, even practiced responses in front of a mirror. But this stunned silence? I wasn't ready for it. Eventually, I decided to fill the silence. Probably not the smartest move, but I started laying out everything I knew about her affair. How it started, the involvement of her sister, what might have happened during COVID. I even threw in some assumptions about gaps in the story. She just stood there, staring at the floor the whole time. The more I talked, the angrier I got, especially because she wouldn't say or do anything. I was boiling inside but managed to keep my voice steady and avoided turning to insults or yelling. Finally, I ran out of words. Another long, awkward pause. And in that silence, my anger turned into something worse. Deep, aching sadness. I asked her gently, almost pleadingly, what I had done to push her away. I asked if she had ever truly loved me. I asked if her lover had been worth it. Nothing. She didn't say a word. Didn't move. Didn't cry. Didn't even look at me. Just stood there with her head down. That silence hurt more than anything else I've been through since X-Day. More than finding out about the affair. More than the lies. More than the betrayal. I don't even know what to feel anymore. I stood there, staring at her, unable to move. And then, somehow it got even worse. Of course, our daughters overheard the entire confrontation. I feel so incredibly stupid. I've spent the past few weeks pouring all my energy into taking care of them, trying to meet their needs, but in that moment, I wasn't thinking about where they might be. Our oldest daughter came downstairs, furious, and started screaming. She let out all the anger and frustration she'd been bottling up since this whole nightmare began. My wife didn't say a word. She just bolted upstairs and locked herself in the bedroom. I could hear her crying for most of the night, up until I finally fell asleep from sheer exhaustion. Only our youngest daughter tried to talk to her. The rest of us avoided her entirely. I've been debating whether to offer her the option of staying at my sister's house until the divorce is finalized. I know it's still her house too, but coexisting under the same roof feels unbearable for all of us. I was wrong about my wife, and you all were right. I was wrong about everything. Our years together, the memories we made, the life we built. I convinced myself she would fall to her knees, beg for forgiveness, and spill the truth to ease her guilt. But that's not who she is. This is the same woman who once drove back to the farmer's market because she realized she'd been given $10 too much in change. That same sense of integrity clearly doesn't apply to her family. We're not worth it to her. I'm not worth it to her. Maybe I never was. What now? Today has been unbearably uncomfortable. My daughters and I are trying to continue living the way we have for the past 2 weeks, but obviously that's no longer possible. I just want to fast forward through all of it. The divorce, the awkward conversations, the inevitable fights, the drama. To those of you who've had to live with an unfaithful spouse while navigating divorce, how did you manage? How did you stay sane, especially with kids in the picture? I know people say it gets better, but right now I feel so far from that. There isn't a single moment where I don't want to scream or break down crying. I'm trying my best to stay stable for my daughter's sake, but I'm not sure I can keep this up for 3 more months. School is starting soon, but the end of this nightmare feels so far away. I guess this is my life now. Update 5. I snapped. Since my wife came back and I found out about her cheating, I've been in a terrible state. I've been trying to fake it for my daughter's sake. Saying the right things, thinking the right thoughts, but tonight, I couldn't keep it together. As many of you have said, the pain comes in waves. Tonight, it hit me especially hard, and I lost my temper. The divorce petition has been filed, but my wife hasn't hired an attorney yet. I've been trying to be patient and cautious, hoping for an uncontested divorce we can settle on our own. But after tonight, I'm not sure if that's possible anymore. We've been living under the same roof for a few weeks now. On Fridays, my wife goes to her sister's house and stays there until Sunday night. It's about an hour away with no traffic, but her work is close to our home, so she always comes back. We've fallen into this routine of avoiding each other. My daughters and I try to live our lives as normally as possible, while my wife mostly keeps to herself. There have been occasional interactions in the evenings with everyone except my oldest daughter. She refuses to talk to her mother after a few big fights. I've been following a lot of advice lately, trying to keep my composure during interactions with my wife. I've made a huge effort to remain brief, polite, and indifferent. It takes all my strength, but until tonight, I managed to stay respectful. But tonight I failed. The last couple of Fridays, my wife would come home after work, pack some things, and head to her sister's place for the weekend before I even got home. But tonight was different. When I walked through the door, she was waiting for me in the kitchen. I tried to just walk past her, but she gently took my hand and asked if I was really going to treat her like this just because she wasn't ready to talk about her cheating. This was the first time she had even mentioned the affair since it came to light almost a month ago. Honestly, I tried to stay quiet and walk away. But the house was empty. The girls weren't home. And the anger that's been boiling inside me for weeks finally spilled over. I let her have it. Every offense, every hurt, every ounce of anger, despair, and anguish that I've been carrying. I let it all out. I can't even tell you how long I talked. I completely lost track of time. My voice got louder, my emotions surged, and I broke down completely. I told her how broken I am, how every single day is agony. Everything I've been holding back, everything that's been tormenting me, came pouring out like a flood. I wish I could say I kept my composure, but I didn't. I cried. I yelled. I vented. If I tried to recount it all, I could probably write 4,000 words about everything I said. Once I started, I couldn't stop. When I was finally starting to run out of steam, I felt ashamed of myself. I knew I shouldn't have let her get to me. I knew it would happen. I knew I couldn't keep it bottled up forever, and I hated that I'd let her see me like that. But something unexpected happened. For the first time since this all started, she broke down too. She started sobbing uncontrollably. And as much as I hate to admit it, seeing her in that state gave me a kind of bitter satisfaction. I wish I didn't care, but there was a twisted relief in seeing her suffer too. Maybe she does feel something. Maybe there's a shred of empathy left in her after all. Between sobs, she kept repeating, "I'm so sorry," over and over again. Eventually, I walked out of the kitchen. I couldn't stand there any longer. I told her to leave me alone, and she did. She stayed in the kitchen for a while, but then she packed up and left for her sister's house again. The girls came home about half an hour later and immediately sensed that something had happened. It was hard to hide it, but I wasn't ready to talk about it, and I don't think they need to know. The two younger girls have been doing better lately, and I don't want to set them back. Telling my oldest would only make things worse. She's still furious with her mother as it is. I hate all of this. I just hate it. Looking back, I feel like I should have kept my cool, brushed her off and walked away, but I didn't. And now I can't stop wondering if she was trying to start a conversation about the affair but didn't know how. I'm starting to worry about her. I know some of you will criticize me for this, but I don't want anything bad to happen to her. She's been isolated, left alone with her thoughts, and almost everyone has turned their backs on her. Yes, she deserves it. I know that, but she's still a human being. She's still the mother of my children. I called my brother and vented to him too. It helped a little. I'll try again on Monday. Start fresh. I'm only human, and as much as I regret how it happened, spilling it all out tonight made me feel a little better. Update 6. It's been a terrible week. I know many of you have tried to support me, and I can't thank you enough for your concern. But things are not going well. Honestly, this week has knocked me out even more than the last. My wife has been relentless. All week, she's been overly sweet, apologizing endlessly for her cheating, crying, and bombarding me with attention. She's been knocking on my door at night, trying to talk. I ignored her when I could, but sometimes I gave in if I was in the mood to listen. Finally, on Wednesday night, I snapped. I told her to leave me alone. And then, last night happened. It's been just over a month since she came back, and we've fallen into this uncomfortable routine of living together. But last night, after the girls went to bed, she asked to talk to me again. This time with a different tone than earlier in the week. At first, I resisted. I didn't want to deal with it. But eventually, I agreed and we went to the garage to sit in my car. I didn't want another conflict in front of the kids. That's when she told me everything. We sat there for almost 3 hours as she laid it all out in her own words. I don't know how much I can even share right now, it's overwhelming. I stayed up all night, unable to sleep, listening to her cry for hours. I cried too. Then came the anger. Wild, unrelenting anger that I had to fight to keep from turning into yelling. Then the tears again. Then more anger. It was an endless, agonizing cycle. I'm sorry if I don't respond to questions right away. I need to process this, to talk it out and somehow try to get some sleep. But being around her is excruciating. Tonight, she hasn't stopped apologizing and begging for another chance. I had to leave the house for hours just to escape her. Here's what I've learned. Her sister introduced her to her lover about 5 years ago, just before COVID hit. According to her, there were no romantic intentions at the time. He was a high-ranking man at a company she wanted to work for. He helped her get the job and she still works there. Initially, her desire to switch jobs wasn't tied to the affair, but once she got hired, things changed. He started flirting with her, texting, sending photos, and just before the pandemic, their relationship became physical. She confessed to her sister about it and even considered telling me, but ultimately decided to bury the secret and say nothing. During the pandemic lockdowns, she claimed they stopped communicating. But when restrictions lifted and she returned to work, he reached out again, and their relationship resumed. From then on, it became an on-again, off-again affair. She said she tried to end it several times out of guilt, but each time she went back to him. Last night she disclosed a lot. She even brought a 5-page, handwritten document where she detailed the entire timeline of their affair. She read through it all, answering my questions as she went. She admitted to lying, so many lies. She lied about weekends with the girls, about business trips, about traffic, about parenting issues, shopping trips, and more. The list was endless. Every excuse was just a cover to spend time with him. And the worst part? I trusted her. I trusted every word she said without question. Listening to her confession only made me feel worse. Everyone turned out to be right. The truth was even more painful than I had imagined. She claimed her affection for me never faded during all those years, which felt like a cruel irony. It didn't seem distant or disconnected, as I've read happens in situations like this. Sure, intimacy changed, but not enough to set off any alarm bells. Still, she admitted she had fallen in love with him and wanted to live with him. He was older, divorced, and single, promising her expensive trips, luxury, and a carefree life where she could escape family responsibilities. She confessed that the high of being with him was too much to resist. And then she said it. She was bored with our day-to-day family life. She was incredibly frank, emotional, and seemed honest. But hearing it was unbearable. In the middle of her story, I broke down. I cried hard. It was excruciating to hear, as you might expect. Of course, once she finished her confession, she told me how much she loved me, how she always had, and that she was willing to do anything to save our marriage. Many of you predicted this would happen, and it did. But it all felt so rehearsed, like she had practiced those words in her head. I've known this woman for more than half my life, and I can tell when she's lying, or at least I think I can. Maybe I'm wrong, but honestly, I don't think it matters anymore. I held it together better than I did last week, but I still got angry. I said things I'm not proud of. I even told her that her lover had dated plenty of women, and that she was just another one he was willing to discard. That hit her hard. A million thoughts raced through my head in that moment. All the things I could have said, all the ways I could have hurt her back. But there was one question I couldn't hold back. If your lover were still alive and you had to choose between him and me, who would you choose? She froze, clearly blindsided by the question, and muttered, "That's not fair." But I insisted. Finally, she answered, "Of course I'd choose you." My response was immediate. "Your hesitation is the reason I want a divorce, because you're lying again." That broke her. She started sobbing, and that was the end of the conversation. We sat in the car a while longer, her crying, me staring into nothingness. I was so tired, emotionally drained, that I finally told her we were getting a divorce. I said we needed to act civilized for the sake of the girls. I told her we had to be good parents and remain present in their lives, despite everything. I added that, after all the pain she caused me, I hoped she would prove herself to be a decent enough person to divorce fairly and peacefully. The last thing I said to her was something I'd read online. A phrase that seemed fitting, though I meant it 100%. I leaned over, kissed her forehead, and told her, "I will love you forever." Then I got out of the car and went to bed. That was the end of it. Of course, I didn't sleep last night. I won't sleep tonight either. Her opportunity to contest the divorce is gone now, which is one small relief. But I haven't spoken to a lawyer yet, and I feel like I'm drowning in these waves of depression and anger. Hearing everything last night was unbearable. Maybe I'd have been better off not knowing. Sure, she could have lied or exaggerated, but what she said matched perfectly with everything I've pieced together over the last month. I have good days, moments where I feel stronger, and then something like this happens and it all comes crashing down again. It feels like months have passed since she came back, but it's really only been a few days. I keep trying to find some semblance of normalcy, but it's impossible. Imagine the love of your life, the only woman you've ever loved, the only woman you've ever kissed, tells you she cheated on you for over 4 years because she was bored. Not because she fell out of love. Not because we drifted apart. Not because of relationship problems or lack of intimacy. Just because she was bored. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Thank you for listening. Getting out of bed each morning feels like a battle. The house has grown so quiet, and the reality of the last few months has finally hit me with full force. I feel like Andy Dufresne from The Shawshank Redemption, standing in the path of a hurricane, hoping it will subside. I know it's just a movie, but that's what my life feels like now. No joy, no hope, just a massive crater where my soul used to be. For weeks, I've put on a mask of strength for my daughter's sake. First, when I found out about the betrayal, then through the agonizing weeks of living together, the raw conversations, and now her absence. She's gone, and I can't pretend to be strong anymore. I can barely muster the strength to get out of bed. But I know I have to keep going for my daughters. So somehow I do. I replay our last conversation over and over in my mind, like a terrible movie I can't stop watching. I regret every word, wishing I could go back and say something else. Anything else. The last thing I said to her was, "I love you and always will, but I never want to see you again." I was hurt, vulnerable, desperate, and just trying to be honest. I didn't know how to articulate my feelings anymore, and now life, in some cruel twist, has granted my wish. Considering they'll have to live without their mother for the rest of their lives, my daughters seem to be doing remarkably well. My oldest has stepped up in ways I never could have imagined. She takes care of me, makes sure I eat, and spends weekends watching movies with me. I'm so grateful for her. The younger two are slowly returning to normal school, sports, their routines. Watching them find their footing again brings me some peace. My mom and brother have been pillars of support too. But despite all of this, every day remains incredibly difficult. We're all going to therapy. My daughters love it and seem to be benefiting from it. As for me, it hasn't worked, at least not yet. There's too much guilt, too much sadness, too much everything. I only go because my oldest insists on it. I'm a Christian, and I've been reading the Book of Job, trying to hold on to my faith through all of this. But I'll admit, I'm struggling. Some days, I just want to scream, "This is not fair," 1,000 times at the top of my lungs. I thought I was a good husband, a good father, a moral man. I thought I did right by people. But now I've been dealt this terrible fate, and I can't seem to climb out of this pit of despair. I feel exhausted, hollow, and full of self-pity. There's a terrible emptiness inside me that I don't know how to fill. But I keep going because I have to. For my daughters, for my family, and maybe eventually for myself. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.